I never thought I'd end up as the kind of person who digs up graves, but life is a way of dragging you into dark corners you'd rather avoid. It all started one July morning when the phone rang at 6 a.m. I just drifted off after a long night shift at the auto shop on the outskirts of Chicago, where I made a living patching tires and changing oil for beat-up old trucks. The shrill ring cut through the fog of exhaustion in my head, and I stumbled upright, fumbling for the clunky old phone on the table. "Hello," I mumbled, my voice rough from lack of sleep. "Are you Daniel Harper?" The voice on the other end was flat, almost emotionless, the kind nurses use when they've grown numb to delivering bad news. "This is a nurse from St. Luke's Hospital. I'm so sorry to inform you that your mother, Catherine Harper, passed away last night. She fell down the stairs at home. Head trauma. It was quick. She didn't suffer." I sat frozen on the couch, still clutching the phone, my mind blank like an abandoned room. My mom, the tough woman who raised me single-handedly, the one I always thought was invincible, dead from a fall down the stairs. It didn't add up. She knew every step in that creaky old wooden house, every crack in the floorboards, every groan of the wood underfoot. She wasn't clumsy, but I didn't have time to argue with that detached voice. "I'll be right there," I said, hanging up before she could respond. I threw on a worn denim jacket, jumped into my rusted Ford Ranger, and drove through the misty suburban streets. My head spun, trying to piece together the fragmented scraps of information. Mom, 62, still fit, still tending her garden, and fixing leaky pipes when needed. A fall? I didn't buy it. When I pulled up to the house, the sun was just rising, casting a faint gold over the sparse trees around the property. But inside, everything was dark and cold, like a tomb. Mom's two-story wooden house sat tucked away in an aging neighborhood, where crumbling fences and overgrown lawns were the norm. I pushed open the front door, and the smell of old wood mixed with something faintly sour hit me. The living room was just as I remembered. Faded upholstered armchair, scratched coffee table, and the lone family photo of me and Mom hanging crooked on the wall. But that sense of familiarity shattered when I stepped toward the stairs. The antique table lamp Mom loved lay toppled on the floor, its bulb shattered into tiny, glinting shards. I knelt down, picking up a piece of glass, and noticed something stuck to it. A dark red smear, dried like old paint. Blood? My pulse quickened. I looked up, and that's when I saw the dent in the wall, just above the third step. It was deep, circular, like someone had slammed something heavy, or a head, into it. On the floor, a thin trail of dried dirt stretched from the base of the stairs to the back door, faint but unmistakable, like a footprint left in a hurry. The cops showed up soon after, two middle-aged officers with bored expressions like they just wanted to wrap this up and grab breakfast. "Domestic accident," the older one said, his voice monotone. "Old folks fall downstairs all the time. Nothing unusual." I pointed out the dent, the dirt, the blood-streaked glass, but they shrugged. "Maybe she hit the wall on her way down. Dirt's probably from someone's shoes. Don't overthink it, kid." They patted my shoulder and left, leaving me alone in the silent house. I didn't believe them. Mom didn't fall. Someone had been here, and I needed to find out who. I stayed at Mom's place for a few days after that, sorting through her things to keep my mind occupied. But every time I passed the stairs, a chill ran down my spine, like someone was watching me from the shadows. Then I saw him, the gaunt man. It was about a week after the funeral. I was hauling trash bags out front when I spotted him standing at the corner across the street, maybe 50 yards from the house. He was tall, skeletal, wearing a tattered leather jacket with ripped sleeves at the elbows. His greasy hair clung to his forehead, and his sunken eyes locked onto me like twin black pits. He smoked a cheap cigarette, the smoke curling around his bony face, and when I glanced his way, he smirked, a crooked, lopsided grin that showed off-yellowed teeth. I tried to ignore him, figuring he was just some harmless drifter. But the next day he was back, same spot, same stance, his filthy shoes scuffing the pavement. This time, I saw him holding a brown paper bag, something inside twitching faintly like it was alive. A rat? An injured bird? I didn't know, and I didn't want to. I ducked back inside, slamming the door, but through the crack in the curtains, I saw him still standing there, staring, that grin plastered on his face. He showed up every day after that, like a wordless ghost. Once I tried yelling, "What do you want?" But he didn't answer, just tilted his head, the grin widening, then turned and walked off. The way he stared, like he knew something I didn't, kept me awake at night. I started locking the doors tighter, checking the windows before bed, but I could still feel his eyes cutting through the walls. The gaunt man wasn't the only one setting me on edge. There was the old lady next door, Marjorie. I'd never seen her step outside in the 20 years I'd lived here. Her house was a wreck, windows caked with dust, front yard choked with knee-high weeds, and the neighbors whispered she was a recluse living off welfare. But a few days after Mom's death, she showed up. I was clearing out the kitchen when I heard a faint knock. I opened the door, and there she was, dressed in a faded bathrobe, her white hair a tangled mess spilling over her shoulders. Her trembling hands held a tin of homemade cookies, the stale scent of moldy dough wafting from the misshapen lumps. "Want to talk about your mom?" she asked, her voice raspy like dry leaves rustling. Her eyes were cloudy, almost milky, but I swear they pierced right through me. "No, thanks," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. She nodded, but as she turned to leave, I heard her mutter, "She knew too much." I slammed the door, my heart pounding. Those words echoed in my head all day. What did she know? And why did she glance at the stairs when she said it? The next day, I caught her standing at her window, staring across at Mom's house. She held a kitchen knife, its blade glinting under the streetlight. She wasn't cutting anything, just standing there, staring, clutching the knife, her lips moving like she was mumbling to herself. I yanked the curtains shut, but I could still feel her gaze burning into my back. Her and the gaunt man. Were they tied to Mom's death? I had to find out. The dream started about a month after Mom died. I'd see her standing at the foot of the stairs, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, blood dripping from her temple onto the wooden floor. She didn't speak, just stared at me, her eyes wide with a silent warning. Sometimes a tall, thin figure loomed behind her, but I could never make out its face. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, gasping for air, and each time, I grew more certain something was wrong. I started digging through Mom's things, hoping for a clue. In her small upstairs bedroom, under the bed, I found an old metal box, its lock rusted shut. I pried it open with a screwdriver, and inside were some tax papers, a stack of family photos, and a worn leather notebook. I flipped it open, and Mom's shaky handwriting stared back at me. "He's watching me," she wrote on the first page. "I hear footsteps in the attic at night, but when I check, no one's there." Another page read, "She came today with cookies. She knows, but she won't talk." No names, no dates, just disjointed scrawls like stifled screams. One line chilled me. "He stood outside the window last night, staring in. I saw his eyes like black holes." The final page nearly made me drop the book. They want what's in my head. I have to hide it. I read it over and over, my hands trembling. Who was he? Who was she? And what was in her head? I glanced around the room, feeling the walls closing in. The attic footsteps, was I imagining them, or were they echoing somewhere in the house right now? I knew I had to dig deeper, but I never thought it'd lead me to a graveyard at midnight, shovel in hand, unearthing Mom's grave for answers. After finding the notebook, sleep became impossible. Every night, I lay on Mom's old bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for something, anything, to break this suffocating silence. And then it happened. One night, at 2 a.m., I heard it, a faint scraping like fingernails on wood coming from the attic. At first, I chalked it up to wind whistling through the old roof, but the sound was steady, rhythmic, like someone pacing slowly across the floorboards above. I sat up, heart pounding, grabbing Mom's old flashlight, the heavy metal kind she always kept by her bed. The attic stairs were at the end of the hall, a tiny wooden door I'd rarely noticed as a kid. I crept toward it, the floor creaking under my feet, each step stretching into eternity. When I touched the knob, it was ice cold, like it had been pulled from a freezer. I took a deep breath, turned it, and the flashlight beam cut into the thick darkness above. The attic was a dusty mess, the air heavy with the stench of rotting wood and old fabric. Cardboard boxes were stacked haphazardly, draped in cobwebs, and a cracked mirror leaned in the corner, reflecting the beam in eerie streaks across the walls. I stepped up, the floorboards groaning under my weight, and I swear the scraping stopped the moment I reached the top step. I swept the light around, searching for anything, a rat, a stray cat, some rational explanation. But there was nothing, just oppressive silence and the feeling of being watched. Then I saw it, a loose floorboard in the far corner, sticking up slightly like someone had pried it open and set it back carelessly. I knelt down, prying it up with my hands, nails scraping the rough wood. Underneath was a small tin box, the kind used for cigarettes, rusted at the edges. I popped it open, and inside was an old, unlabeled cassette tape and a folded scrap of paper. I unfolded it, and Mom's shaky scrawl appeared. "Listen to this when I'm gone." My heart raced. I didn't have a cassette player, but I knew I had to hear it. It was the only lead I had. The next morning, I drove to a thrift store on the outskirts where shelves sagged with outdated electronics and faded clothes. I found a battery-powered cassette player, scratched but functional, for $10. The clerk, an old man with bleary eyes, stared at me as I paid, like he knew I was up to something I shouldn't be. "Careful with old stuff," he muttered, his voice gravelly. I nodded absently and bolted to my truck, my chest burning with urgency. I parked in an empty lot near Mom's house, unwilling to listen to the tape in that unnerving place. I plugged in the headphones, hands shaking as I hit play. Mom's voice came through, faint but clear, like she was sitting right beside me. "If you're hearing this, I'm dead. Don't trust the cops. Don't trust anyone in this neighborhood. They're after what I know, what I saw at the hospital when you were little. He's been following me since then. He never stops." Her voice broke with ragged breaths, like she was running while recording. "If they get me, you have to run. Don't look for me. Don't." The tape cut off with a loud bang, a door being smashed open like someone swinging a hammer. Then silence. I sat there, hands trembling so hard I nearly dropped the player, my mind reeling. Hospital? What I saw? I vaguely recalled Mom working as a nurse when I was a kid at St. Anthony's on Chicago's South Side. But she never talked about it much, just said it was hard work before quitting to bartend at a local dive. I rewound the tape, listening again, and this time I caught a faint whisper after the bang. I cranked the volume, and Mom's voice came through, barely audible. "Basement. Locker 17. I didn't know what Locker 17 meant, but it tied to St. Anthony's. The tape was Mom's last will, and I couldn't ignore it. I stuffed it in my pocket, drove back to her house, determined to unearth the past she'd kept buried all these years. As a kid, I didn't think much about Mom's job. To me, she was the strong woman who came home smelling of antiseptic on her white uniform, her hands rough from washing them too often during shifts. I remembered nights she'd get back late, sometimes sitting alone in the kitchen, hands cradling her head like she was chasing something away. Once, when I was about 6, I peeked through the door crack and saw her crying, whispering to herself. "Can't tell anyone," she repeated, voice choked. I asked her the next morning, but she just smiled, ruffled my hair, and said, "Mom's just tired, Danny." Now, those memories sharpened, weighing heavier. I went back to Mom's house, tearing through her old desk drawers in the living room. There I found a stack of letters from the 90s, no envelopes, just folded sheets of handwritten paper. One read, "Keep quiet, or we'll find your son." Another, "You can't hide forever." The handwriting varied, but the tone was the same, cold, threatening. I realized Mom had lived in fear all those years, and I, the oblivious kid playing ball in the yard, never noticed. Tucked in the pile was an old photo. Mom, younger, in her nurse's uniform, standing with a group in white coats. She was smiling, but her eyes were empty, like the smile was forced. Next to her was a gaunt man, tall and lanky, with sunken eyes and a crooked grin. My heart skipped a beat. He looked like the man from the corner. No, not just like him. It was him. Older now, hair thinner, but that stare, that grin, unmistakable. I flipped the photo over, and scrawled on the back was St. Anthony's 1997 basement crew. Basement. Locker 17. It was starting to connect, but I still didn't know what Mom saw there, or why it haunted her for decades. I had to get to St. Anthony's. The hospital shut down in 2005, now just a crumbling heap of brick on Chicago's south side, abandoned and forgotten. I drove there on a rainy afternoon, bringing a flashlight, a crowbar from the garage, and Mom's letters stuffed in my jacket. Rain poured down like a gray curtain, blurring everything, but I couldn't wait. Every minute, I felt the gaunt man and Marjorie closing in, like vultures waiting for me to slip. I parked a few blocks away, not wanting anyone to spot my rusted Ranger near the site. The building loomed through the downpour, a squat concrete mass, windows shattered, vines clinging to the walls like dried veins. The front door was chained shut, but a broken ground floor window was wide enough to climb through. I scrambled in, clothes soaking and sticking to my skin, the musty smell of decay hitting me hard. Inside was pitch black, save for faint light seeping through cracks in the ceiling. I flicked on the flashlight, sweeping it over a long hallway littered with trash, crumpled papers, broken syringes, rusted hospital beds left behind. The rain drummed steadily on the roof, mixing with the drip of water somewhere, forming a strange rhythm, like the building itself was breathing. I found the stairs to the basement, each step creaking under me, and when I pushed open the heavy metal door at the bottom, a blast of cold air hit my face. The basement was a maze of narrow corridors, walls streaked with black mold and rusted metal doors. I passed empty rooms, the stale scent of old medicine lingering, and signs reading restricted area dangling from the walls. At the end of one hall, I found a room labeled storage, its wooden door half-rotted but still standing. I shoved it open, and the flashlight beam lit up rows of old metal filing cabinets, coated in dust and cobwebs. I counted them off, heart hammering in my chest. Locker 17 was in the far corner, its lock broken, the door slightly ajar like it was beckoning me. I yanked it open, and inside was a thick stack of files, yellowed paper bound with a crumbling rubber band. I snapped it off, flipping through, and what I read turned my blood to ice. There were patient records, dozens of them, all marked trial number 4. Notes detailed drugs, dosages, and psychotic responses. One page read, Patient 23 lost control, attacked staff. Terminated. Another, Nurse K, discovered compound X stockpile, threatened to report. Recommend surveillance. Nurse K. Mom, Catherine. I found an attached photo. Mom standing next to the gaunt man in a white coat, his eyes glinting like in the old picture I'd found. He was part of it, a doctor, a researcher, or some sick bastard running those experiments. I kept reading, and a note made me shudder. Trial number 4. Activate subconscious memory. Goal, behavioral control. Results, 70% insanity, 20% death, 10% transformation. Transformation into what? I didn't know, but I was starting to see why Mom quit, why she was threatened, why that man still hunted her after all these years. She'd seen those experiments. People turned into something less than human. And now, they wanted that secret erased from her mind. I shoved the files into my jacket, turned to leave the basement, but as I hit the stairs, I heard it. Shoes scuffing the floor above, slow and steady, like someone had been waiting for me all along. The scuffing of shoes echoed from upstairs, slow and deliberate, like the heartbeat of a predator biding its time. I froze midway up the basement stairs at St. Anthony's, flashlight trembling in my hand, its beam jittering across the mold-streaked walls. The files stuffed in my jacket suddenly felt like lead, dragging me deeper into the dark. I switched off the light, not wanting it to give me away, and held my breath, listening. The footsteps paused, then resumed, closer now. I realized they were coming from the main hallway, just above the basement door I'd pushed open to get down here. Someone was in the hospital with me, and it wasn't some vagrant or junkie seeking shelter from the rain. The way those shoes moved, purposeful, unhurried, sent a shiver down my spine. I gripped the crowbar tight, inching up the stairs silently, trying not to let the wood creak under my weight. As I neared the door, I pressed my ear to the cold metal, and through a tiny gap, I heard breathing, wheezy, ragged like a lifelong smoker's. Then a voice rasped out, low and distorted, "You shouldn't be here, kid." I jolted, nearly dropping the crowbar. It was the Gaunt Man. I'd know that chilling tone anywhere from the times he stood at the corner, staring at me with that crooked grin. He'd followed me here. I didn't answer, just clenched the crowbar and shoved the door open, charging into the hallway. The dim light from ceiling cracks glinted off his lanky frame, standing about 30 feet away. He still wore that tattered leather jacket, his filthy shoes peeking from under his pants, the cigarette on his lips glowing red in the gloom. He tilted his head, grin widening, yellow teeth bared. "You're too much like your mom," he said, voice low like a whisper from a grave. "Stubborn, nosy, but you won't get away." I didn't think, just acted. I rushed him, swinging the crowbar at his head, but he was faster than I expected. He dodged, and the metal slammed into the wall, ringing out sharply. He chuckled, a guttural sound, then lunged forward, a long knife flashing in his hand under the faint light. "Give me what you took," he snarled, stepping closer. I stumbled back, heart pounding, knowing if I didn't run now, I wouldn't get another chance. I spun around, bolting down the hallway, my feet slipping on the wet, debris-strewn floor. His shoes pounded behind me, faster than I thought a scrawny guy like him could move. I didn't dare look back, just ran, crashing through broken doors and crunching over shattered glass. I dove through the window I'd climbed in earlier, tumbling outside, the cold rain stinging my face like needles. The files in my jacket were soaked, but I didn't care. I just wanted to survive the night. The rain blurred everything, but I heard him, his shoes slapping the wet grass, his wheezing breath closing in. I sprinted across the open lot toward my Ranger, but when I got close, I saw the tires, slashed, long, deep cuts like someone had used that damn knife to trap me here. I cursed, spinning around, and there he was, emerging from the dark, less than 60 feet away. He didn't rush. He knew I had nowhere to go. I darted into the small woods behind the hospital, branches clawing at my arms and face, leaving stinging scratches. His laughter followed me, hoarse, warped, like an injured animal's cry. I tripped, crashing to the ground, and as I scrambled up, I realized I'd stumbled into an old, forgotten graveyard, its broken tombstones jutting from the earth. I ducked behind a large slab, holding my breath, praying he wouldn't find me. His footsteps slowed, then stopped. I heard him mutter, "You can't hide forever, kid. I know you've got it." Then the sound faded, swallowed by the rain. I stayed there, soaked and shivering, too scared to move until dawn broke. When I was sure he was gone, I staggered to the main road, flagging down a delivery truck to get back to Mom's. I couldn't risk the Ranger, not tonight. I got back to Mom's as the sun rose, the rain finally stopping, leaving shimmering puddles on the street. I locked the door, drew the curtains, and sat at the kitchen table, spreading the soggy files out in front of me. My hands shook as I flipped through, trying to piece together what Mom had seen at St. Anthony's and why it was worth killing her for. The files detailed trial number 4, a secret program run in the hospital basement from 1995 to 1999. They used psychiatric patients People Society had discarded to test a drug called Compound X. The goal, as the notes said, was to activate subconscious memory and control behavior through chemistry. But the results were a nightmare. One page read, "Patient 12 developed extreme violence, bit off on tongue. Terminated." Another, "Patient 19 became catatonic, but showed signs of nonverbal communication with other subjects. Recommend further study." I found the part about Mom. Nurse K. Harper discovered Compound X stockpile in basement storage, October 14th, 1997. Threatened to report to management. Suspended from duty, placed under close surveillance. A handwritten note in the margin, a sign watcher. Ensure silence. I realized the Gaunt Man wasn't just an experimenter. He was the one sent to shut Mom up, and he'd been doing it for over 20 years. At the end was a list of transformed subjects, the 10% who survived the trials but changed. A note said, "Erratic behavior, fixation on trial-related targets. Recommend use for surveillance purposes." I shivered, picturing the Gaunt Man, his sunken eyes, crooked grin, the way he always lingered near Mom's house. Was he one of them? A transformed subject sent to watch her. And now me? I needed answers. And the only one who might know something was Marjorie. I didn't want to face her, not after seeing her with that knife at the window, but I had no choice. I knocked on her door the next morning, crowbar tucked in my jacket, ready for anything. She opened it after a few minutes, her cloudy eyes scanning me up and down. "You're here," she said, voice raspy, like she'd been expecting me. She wore the same faded bathrobe, her white hair a tangled mess, and the moldy stench of her house hit me hard. "Come in," she said, shuffling inside. Her place was a chaotic mess, furniture piled high, stacks of old newspapers reaching my knees, black and white photos scattered across the floor. She sank into a torn armchair, pointing at the seat across from her. "Did your mom tell you?" she asked, her trembling hands fidgeting with an old lighter. "No," I said, voice stiff, "but I know she worked at St. Anthony's. I know about the experiments, and I know you're involved." She laughed, a dry hacking sound. "I'm not involved, kid. I'm a victim. I was there in the basement before your mom came. They tested Compound X on me. I was one of the survivors." She leaned forward, her eyes glinting unnaturally. "But it changed me. I see things no one else does, hear things no one else hears. They let me go, but they always watched. When your mom found out, they sent him, the guy you see on the street. He's one of us too." My heart pounded. "What does he want?" "What your mom knew," she said. "They think she kept files or a sample of Compound X. They don't know she burned it long ago. But now you've got those files, don't you?" She tilted her head, a crooked smile creeping across her wrinkled face. I didn't answer, but Marjorie knew. "You can't keep them," she said, stepping closer. "They'll find you, like they found your mom. He's not alone. There are others, ones like me, but worse." She raised her arm, and I saw long scars, deep cuts like she'd carved them herself to drive something out of her mind. "Then why didn't you say anything?" I snapped, standing, hand tightening on the crowbar. "Why'd you let her die?" "I couldn't," she said, voice breaking. "They watch me. If I talked, they'd kill me. But your mom, she was tough. She fought them, and they pushed her down those stairs. I heard her scream, but I couldn't do anything." She turned away, shoulders shaking. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. She knew too much, and the way she held that knife didn't scream victim. I backed toward the door. "Thanks for talking," I said coldly. "I'll figure out the rest myself." As I stepped outside, she shouted after me, "Don't dig up her grave, kid. You'll regret it." I froze, heart skipping a beat. How did she know what I was planning? I hadn't told anyone. I turned back, but she'd slammed the door, and through the gap, I saw her clutching the knife, muttering to herself. I went back to Mom's, mind spinning. Was Marjorie a victim or a conspirator? The gaunt man wanted the files, but did he really think Mom still had something? And why warn me about the grave? I looked at Mom's notebook on the table, and a crazy thought hit me. If Mom wasn't in that coffin, then who, or what was? Marjorie's warning echoed in my head all day. "Don't dig up her grave, kid. You'll regret it." But I couldn't stop. Every clue, from a notebook to the tape, from the St. Anthony files to her story, pointed to one inescapable truth. The answers lay 6 feet under, in Mom's coffin. If she didn't die from a fall, if the gaunt man and the others did something to her, I had to see it for myself. I waited until nightfall, when darkness cloaked the neighborhood and the dim streetlights couldn't pierce the thick October fog. I grabbed an old shovel from the shed behind Mom's house, its rusted blade still sharp enough to cut through dirt. I threw on a thick jacket, stuffed the flashlight and crowbar in my pockets, and drove to St. Mary's Cemetery, about 10 miles away. While I got there, I killed the headlights, parked in a shadowed corner near the fence, and slipped in through a broken side gate. The cemetery was silent as a forgotten world, the wind whistling through the tombstones and insects buzzing faintly in the grass. I found Mom's grave in the 3rd row, a small marker reading Catherine Harper, 1962 to 2025, beloved mother. I stood there for a moment, hands trembling on the shovel, wondering if I was losing my mind. But then I pictured the gaunt man's crooked grin, Marjorie's milky eyes, and Mom's last words. They want what's in my head. I took a deep breath and started digging. The earth was cold and heavy, clinging to the shovel like it wanted to keep its secrets. Each scoop sliced into my sanity, and sweat soaked my back despite the biting chill. I swear I heard faint laughter somewhere among the graves, but I told myself it was just the wind. I couldn't let fear stop me now. After 2 hours of digging, the shovel hit wood, a dry thunk, echoing through the night. I dropped to my knees, clawing the dirt off the coffin lid, nails scraping the peeling varnish. Mom's oak casket lay there, cold and solid, like a door to a truth I wasn't sure I could face. I pried it open with the crowbar, each splintering crack stabbing at my heart. When the lid swung up, a mix of damp earth and something sweet, rotten hit my nose. I shone the flashlight inside, and my heart stopped. The coffin was empty. No mom, no body, just a crumpled hospital gown, crusted with dried blood, and a folded scrap of paper in the corner. I grabbed it, hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped the light. Mom's handwriting glowed under the beam. Don't trust them. They want what's in my head. Run, Danny. I fell back, the flashlight rolling away, its beam bouncing wildly across the surrounding graves. Empty. Mom wasn't here. So whose body had I buried 3 months ago? Or what? I thought back to the funeral, the closed casket, the mortician saying the accident was too severe to open it. I trusted them, but now I saw it was a lie. Someone had taken Mom, or she'd never been there at all. The laughter came again, louder, closer. I spun around, and there he was, the gaunt man, standing a few yards away, eyes glinting in the dark. He still held his cigarette, smoke curling around his skeletal face, and the knife in his hand gleamed under the moonlight. "What did you dig up, kid?" he asked, voice hoarse with twisted glee. I gripped the shovel, standing up, ready to fight. "What did you do to my mom?" I roared, voice cracking with fear and rage. He tilted his head, grin stretching wider, yellow teeth bared. "Your mom was a problem," he said, stepping closer, shoes squelching on the wet grass. "She knew too much. She saw what we did at St. Anthony's, guys like me, the transformed ones. She wanted to ruin it all, but we wouldn't let her." He raised the knife, and I charged, swinging the shovel at his arm. The blade hit his wrist with a sharp crack, and the knife clattered to the ground. He growled, but not in pain. It was the growl of a beast provoked. He lunged, faster than I expected, and we crashed to the dirt, rolling over the fresh-dug earth. I felt his long nails rake my face, leaving burning scratches, and his wheezing breath hit my neck, reeking like death. I thrashed, punching his chest, but he was stronger than he looked, unnaturally strong, like Compound X had turned him into something inhuman. I grabbed the crowbar from my pocket, and, as he reached to strangle me, I stabbed it into his shoulder. He screamed, reeling back, black blood oozing from the wound, soaking his tattered jacket. He didn't come at me again, just stood there, panting, eyes blazing. "You don't get it, kid," he said, voice warped. "Your mom didn't die right away. We kept her alive, in the basement, to dig out what was in her head. But she was stubborn, so we had to shut her up." He laughed, a guttural choke, then turned and bolted into the dark, leaving me sprawled there, chest heaving with every breath. His words pierced my skull like a blade. "We kept her alive, in the basement, to dig out what was in her head. They'd taken Mom, tortured her, and I, the idiot's son, had buried an empty coffin without a second thought." I staggered to my feet, grabbing the flashlight and Mom's note, my mind swirling with unanswerable questions. If she wasn't here, whose body had been in that casket? And why let me bury it? I drove back to Mom's that night, ignoring the dirt caking my clothes and the dried blood on my hands. I tore through the St. Anthony files again, hunting for any clue about the basement he'd mentioned. On the last page, I found a nearly erased handwritten note. Backup site, Warehouse 47, Cicero. Cicero was an industrial town a few miles from Chicago, full of abandoned warehouses since the recession. If they'd held Mom there, she might have been there for 3 months, or at least her real body was. I drove to Cicero as dawn broke, bringing the shovel, flashlight, and crowbar. Warehouse 47 was a crumbling brick building, its roll-up door rusted shut with a heavy padlock. I smashed it open with the crowbar, and when the door rattled up, the stench of rot hit me, spoiled meat and old chemicals. I stepped in, the flashlight beam catching on rotting crates and torn tarps. In the far corner, a door led to a basement. I opened it, and a narrow staircase took me to a cold, concrete room. In the center was a steel table, a figure draped in a white sheet. I walked over, hands trembling as I pulled the sheet back, and there she was, Mom, or what was left of her. Her body was emaciated, skin waxy white, and her eyes were wide open, cloudy, staring at the ceiling. Long scars crisscrossed her scalp like someone had cut in her brain, digging something out. I screamed, collapsing to the floor, tears mixing with the dust on my face. I don't know how long I sat there, beside Mom's body, until the sound of shoes scuffing the stairs broke through. The gaunt man stepped down, shoulders still bleeding from my stab, but that crooked grin stayed fixed. "You found her," he said, voice raspy. "But you're too late. We got what we needed. Her memories, what she saw at St. Anthony's. Now it's just you left." He advanced, knife back in hand, and I had no strength left to run. I stood, gripping the crowbar, ready for one last stand. But before he could lunge, another figure appeared. Marjorie, kitchen knife in hand, her cloudy eyes blazing in the dark. "Enough," she growled, voice shaky but firm. She charged him, plunging the knife into his back. He screamed, collapsing, black blood pooling on the floor. Marjorie turned to me, panting. "Run," she said. "They won't stop. He's not the last." I stared at her, then at Mom one final time, before bolting up the stairs, out of the warehouse, and into the morning light. I didn't know where I'd go, but Marjorie was right. They wouldn't stop. I had the files, I knew the truth, and now I was next. As I drove away from Cicero, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Marjorie standing outside the warehouse, knife still in hand, watching me go. I didn't know what she'd do, but I knew I couldn't go back. Mom was gone, but her secret lived in me, and I'd never let them take it. Never.